Hi there, this is Josh from Literary Gladiators, and today I'm here with a book review. The book that I'm going to be reviewing is Holding Pattern by Jenny Shi. And Holding Pattern, I won this book in a Goodreads giveaway. This is an advanced review copy, and it just so happens that it's going to be released in hardcover by Riverhead Books tomorrow. And this is an interesting one, to say the very least, and by that I mean it does take a direction and touch upon subject matter that isn't necessarily touched upon in things that I've come across. But, as I said before, it's just interesting to say the very least. This book follows a young woman by the name of Kathleen Cheng, and she recently dropped out of her graduate program and moved back to Oakland, California with her mother, Marissa, who is currently getting ready for her wedding. She's getting remarried to a man named Brian, and she wants Kathleen to help her out, because Kathleen is slated to be the maid of honor. The first critical aspect that I noticed is that I see that there are more Kathleens among the Generation X, while Marissa I find is a more common name for millennials than for those that are from Generation X. But I think that it's interesting food for thought, because I found Kathleen to be more mature, and I think that I could feel a slighter sense of sympathy for her. Of course, she was not, I don't think she was incredibly mature, because of the way that she handled her. She did lament a lot on her brutal breakup with Orrin, which was a huge factor as to why she dropped out of her graduate program. But her mother, Marissa, was just incredibly immature and self-absorbed. She did have a very rough upbringing, and she had a very tough transition, making her way to the United States. Her husband and Kathleen's father cheated on her, and he was a jackass. But I still did not like how selfish Marissa came off as being. She was more obsessed and concerned about everything that was going on, and it even seems to, and it almost feels like her fiance Brian exists to highlight these characters. And the interesting thing about Brian is that he is a very decent person, and he does his best to show a sense of concern and interest in others by the way that he doesn't just try to engage in surface small talk with Kathleen. He wants to know more and engage in an extended discussion that he is able to learn more about her. And I think that he was a meaningful character, but again, he was there to be the fiancé for Marissa, and that was that, very much on the surface. We also are introduced to Kathleen's best friend, LB, who is very much a party person, a go-getter, pretty much pushes Kathleen into very wild situations. LB is dating Kathleen's ex-boyfriend from high school, Andrew, and then you have their friend Luke, who is obsessed with his pet rat Milo and Milo's Instagram page, Meet Milo the Rat. And that it is very reflective of the social media obsessed culture and the craving to be noticed and garnering attention. It touches upon the quirky traits of influencers, even though it's not to say that all influencers behave the way that Luke and others that have really made their way up behave. But meanwhile, Kathleen takes on a job with Midas Touch, which is a cuddle therapy service where clients pay to be cuddled by cuddlers. It often goes for $100 an hour, but this book also touches upon different situations, including one such client named Phil who recently lost his wife and begins to really become attached to Kathleen. And when you mix that with her longing, with her second-guessing about her relationship with Orrin, it goes down a very peculiar and awkward path. There's also a lot of flashbacks that take place that point to occurrences involving Kathleen and her parents, and then everything ends up making its way to Las Vegas, where Marissa's bachelorette party and pet exposition are being held. But that's as far as I'm going to go, because I don't want to spoil too much for you. I will say, though, that this book does end somewhat abruptly, and there really isn't much progression as far as the behavior of these characters is concerned. It's just a matter of being able to deal with, tolerate, and accept one another, which in some ways that does seem to occur throughout life. But I just didn't like these characters enough to say that I could really give that way of thinking a pass. I thought that Luke was more so annoying than he was a prime representative of the wannabe influencer. I just wasn't a fan of Marissa. I didn't see any sense of... I didn't bear any sense of sympathy. I only had the slightest sense of sympathy for Kathleen, and still I don't think she was as strong a character. And I don't think that they were really supported by a strong enough plot. Of course, all of these characters are flawed, and I think that that can be said in a lot of circumstances, but it just, to me, only panned out so much. With that being said, I think that it was still a very easy read. I thought that it flowed, and I honestly thought that the strongest part had to do with the occurrences that took place through cuddle therapy and how they incorporate different cuddles at the beginning of many of the chapters. it also brings up the debate of the merit regarding cuddle therapy and whether or not cuddle therapy has merit. I would argue that it can have merit, contingent on the fact that the cuddler and the client both agree to respect one another's boundaries, both physically and emotionally, and that the services do not go too far beyond their face value. And by that I mean that if you want to incorporate things such as dancing and games, that's one thing. But if it's going to get anywhere that implies or encourages sexual activity, then that needs to be stopped. And then it does not become acceptable. And I think that cuddle therapy provides an alternative solution for many of the easy outs, primarily medication. Instead, I think that holistic and, in some ways, old-fashioned solutions are often better than just prescribing a drug, because it can only become so effective. There are so many side effects, and I think there's a lot of things that medication cannot answer. Again, with something like cuddle therapy, both parties need to handle this alternative therapy appropriately. If either side cannot handle it appropriately, one should not engage down this route. And it should only be engaged by subjects that are 18 years of age or older. But I think that it's definitely worth exploring, but it needs to be done properly. I give Holding Pattern 3 stars out of 5. I think that this is something that can be borrowed in the library for a light read. If you want to buy it for cheap, secondhand, when it gets to that point, I would say it's worth reading then. But I don't think that it's worth paying full price for. I want to thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you check out some more videos from this channel. If you like what you see, please subscribe, because we've got more material from many more contributors. And if you really like what you see, please support us on our Patreon, for the money that we make will allow us to provide you, the viewer, with even more great content. For now, and as always, I encourage you to keep reading.